to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rowling. Do you believe you are capable of choosing your future? Sometimes it takes just one person to believe in you, or you to believe in yourself. If you find yourself continuing to say, someday I will take better care of myself, only to continue living the same day over and over and over again, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am your biggest cheerleader, inspiring you to become you on purpose and with intention. Are you ready to create a life you love? I'm excited to share with you some big ideas that you can use today to inspire, impact, and influence your life and everyone in it. The Becoming You show starts now. Hello, my friends. How are you? We're in a new month. I love a new month, as you know. And you know I geek out on a new month that comes with a new week. And so I was looking at my month or my previous month. And as I was working through my fulfillment wheel, what I realized was last month, there were lots of opportunities for me to reprioritize some areas of my life in this month. And so my invitation, I guess, for you before we dig deep into what we're going to talk about today is, when was the last time you've done that? When was the last time you've assessed your all the areas of your life and really were thoughtful with how it is that you're prioritizing this particular aspect of your life? And what is it exactly that you're thinking about this area of your life? Because I say this a lot on this podcast and in conversations, but how you think about and to these areas of your life determines the quality of it. It's not the actual thing. It's not the car. It's not the money. It's not the relationship. It's how you think about it that really makes a difference. And I probably need to do a podcast on that because my brain is all over in navigating what that would look like. But I think that would be an important one. But that's not the one we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about forgiveness today. And before you jump off, because you're like, I don't need it, I know what you're going to say, I want you to consider that you don't know what I'm going to say, because I'm going to turn this on a dime for you today. And I want you to stay because I want you to get the benefit of forgiveness, but not in the way that we've been taught, not in the way that we've been conditioned to believe, not in the way that podcasts and books talk about it. Okay. So most people believe that forgiveness is an external process, right? That forgiving others for the hurt that they've caused us. But the real healing comes when we turn inward. True forgiveness begins and ends with the self. Now, before you're like, yeah, I know this, hold on, okay? No one else, as you know, has the power to make you feel a certain way without your consent. The realization of that frees you from the chains of this hurt and this regret and this bitterness, and it gives you back your power. But also, contrary to popular belief, we don't forgive others for our sake. We forgive others for allowing others to have control over our emotions. We forgive others for any misconceptions that we might have had. And by doing this, we free ourselves from the weight of past hurts and dramas. But why then do we remember hurtful events if they bring more pain? Right? The saying is, you should forgive, but you don't have to forget. That makes no sense to me, ever, because to forgive is truly to forget. By clinging to these painful memories, we rob ourselves of the opportunity for personal growth. Every challenge we face, every offense we endure is an opportunity for spiritual and personal growth. And it's through these trials that we discover our true selves and our immense capacity for resilience and compassion and love. So the best way to, I think, to really illustrate it is by sharing a story, okay? I have a client that is struggling to let go of something that her husband did in the past. Her husband keeps telling her that she needs to let it go. And days will go by, right, when she feels that she truly has forgiven. And then she goes on to say that she knows, right? She knows this work. She knows that she gives for her sake, but then something will trigger her anger. He'll say something or she'll hear something on TV and it just brings it all back. And she knew that she couldn't continue like this. Right? Her husband and even her kids sometimes felt as if they were like walking on eggshells because at any moment, something can set her off. And this was my question to her. Are you willing to question your interpretation of what it means to truly forgive? That would be my question for you to consider. Forgiveness, a term familiar to many, and yet I believe is deeply understood by most. A majority, okay, especially those that kind of are entrenched in like Christian tradition, see it as an act of grace or mercy or atonement, if you will. And yet, have you ever stopped to think about forgiveness, not necessarily as this religious doctrine, but as a holistic tool for self-betterment? So here's a compelling invitation. I want you to consider forgiveness as a practical solution. Yes, the act of forgiving someone transcends the boundaries of divinity and dips its toes for sure into the realm of psychology. But when you genuinely release resentment and bitterness, it's not just your spiritual being that feels lighter. Your mental health receives a profound boost as well. And so let's just talk about these psychological benefits for starters. Okay, forgiving someone is synonymous with releasing a burdensome weight off your chest. It dissipates the cloud of negativity and resentment that typically hovers around us, and it leads to a massive amount of reduced stress and anxiety. It fosters a sense of self-worth because you're no longer anchoring your emotions and self-esteem to past wounds. But here's another profound revelation. The freedom that comes with forgiveness, the freedom from the chains of anger and hurt and the incessant need for retribution, okay? This freedom doesn't just alleviate mental distress. It invites positivity and clarity and an unshakable peace. So if you're found groveling with this concept of forgiveness, unsure of its true meaning and implication, now is the time to explore its dual effect, both its spiritual essence and also its psychological potency. Okay, so when you truly experience this forgiveness that I'm going to invite you to consider, to explore, no words, nor scriptures, nor teachings are needed to reaffirm its importance. The profound internal shift that you undergo becomes testimony to the magic of forgiveness, making it not just an act of divine grace, but a game changer for your emotional and mental well-being. In other words, the true transformation is no longer needing to remember. In a world with motivational quotes and Instagram gurus and self-help books, forgiveness is a term for sure that's tossed out a lot. And everyone seems to tout its virtues, from friends advocating for a fresh start to spiritual leaders emphasizing, the philosophical importance for saving our soul. But here's the thing. Amidst the voices like championing forgiveness, the genuine essence of the profound act gets lost. Instead, what often emerges is a diluted superficial version as the real thing. I talked about true and false confidence on a podcast a while back, and so many of you reached out thanking me for articulating the difference. And just as confidence eludes us because of the way that we're defining and applying and integrating it into who it is that we are, forgiveness, true and false, can also elude us. So that's what I want to spend the time today talking about. What's this false forgiveness that many of us unknowingly embrace? It's the act of verbally expressing forgiveness without truly letting go internally. It's the performance of reconciliation without the emotional and psychological work behind it. It's a Band-Aid solution. Superficially patching wounds without truly healing them. And doing it with the permission to remember. Right? How many times have you heard someone say, I've forgiven them for this, but I'll never forget? Why do we want the permission to remember something that needs to be forgiven in the first place? It's like enduring something wrong for too long. It's like staying somewhere where you don't belong for too long. And when we do that, we eventually feel as if we don't belong anywhere. And we say this proudly. And therein lies the trap. Many tread this path, believing that they've reached the pinnacle of personal growth and healing, only to find themselves triggered, hurt, resentful. Because when memories resurface or old patterns reemerge, this clinical pattern of forgive and hurt can be incredibly disheartening, leaving many jaded about this whole concept of forgiveness. That's what my client was experiencing. She was trapped in this faux forgiveness. She was trapped in this false forgiveness. So understanding and embracing the true essence of forgiveness can transform this ideology, this notion. True, authentic forgiveness is deep. It's a deep, introspective journey. It's not about merely mouthing words, I forgive you, or she's forgiven, but it's about genuinely releasing them from your bitterness and from your anger and from the desire of revenge. It's an internal process, a cleansing of emotional wounds and a conscious choice to free yourself from the shackles of past hurts. True forgiveness is one of the most freest of our freedoms. It brings not just in the moment, but as a sustained state of being. It's a commitment to oneself. It's a pledge to prioritize one's mental and emotional well-being over this allure, if you will, of resentment. So if you've been frustrated, if you've been discouraged by past attempts at forgiveness, or if you're even questioning its real value, I want you to take a pause and consider that we might have been falsely forgiving. Recognizing and understanding the difference between the two is the first step towards healing and genuine peace. And just like false confidence is rooted in ego, so is false forgiveness. So you've heard me talk about the ego a lot on the show, but I want for context in this conversation, I think it's important to understand that the ego, it's complex and it's driven by pride and fear and self-preservation. And it's motivated by the triad. And it can lead us to act in ways that on the surface seem right and noble, but underneath they're steeped with conditions and judgments and limitations. And when forgiveness arises from the ego, it's often merely a tool, a means to an end, be it to control, be it to appease, or even like superiority. It's tactical rather than genuine. And that is why it doesn't feel freeing. You'll know the difference. Scratch that. You'll feel the difference. Knowing is in the head. Feeling is in the heart. Love, ego's opposite, is unbounded and pure. And when love inspires forgiveness, there's no strategy. There's no hidden agenda. It flows naturally without strings attached or conditions applied. It is a profound recognition of our shared humanity and the imperfections that come with it. Imperfections, yes, for you and for everyone else. And through love, we see the person beyond the act, understanding that holding on to past wrong only perpetuates our pain and division. And so for many, this concept of forgiveness can be challenging, especially when hurt runs deep, right? And given the duality of true and false forgiveness, it's not surprising that many are cynical about it. But recognizing and understanding the difference between these two types of forgiveness can be transformative. So if you've been struggling with forgiveness, I want you to ask yourself from where your forgiveness stems. Is it from a place of genuine love and understanding, or is it from the ego, riddled with conditions and expectations? And I know, at least for me, by reflecting on this and making the conscious choice to align with love, you can free yourself from the chains of the past, allowing for the genuine healing and growth on the other side of it to really be available. So I want you to go through, I'm going to share with you some differences. I think there's 4, and I'm sure there's more than that. And if there are, please let me know. But I think there are 4 key differences between true forgiveness and false forgiveness. And I'm offering these for you guys to kind of consider, like, where have I been forgiving from a place of ego versus forgiving from a place of love? Because if you're still attached to this whole idea that you're going to forgive, but you're not going to forget, consider that's all ego. That's not love. Because if you truly forgave, you would not need to remember. So here's the 4. The first one is true forgiveness is permanent. False forgiveness is temporary, which was why my client was continually being hurt with her memories, continually being hurt by something that her husband might have said or a show that she had watched. When you've truly forgiven somebody, that hurt is no longer there. It cannot be re-inspired because it's no longer there for inspiration. True forgiveness is unconditional. False forgiveness has conditions that look like expectations and requirements, like apologies. How many times have you either heard or considered this as a possibility for yourself? I'll forgive as soon as they apologize to me. Or I'll forgive as long as I continue to see behavior that shows me that they truly are sincere and genuine with their apology. It doesn't feel good because it isn't. That's not true forgiveness. That's not true forgiveness. That's false forgiveness. True forgiveness lets the past be over. False forgiveness keeps the past alive. This is why the peace is not available. The memory of the past is what is stealing your commitment, your contentment in the now. True forgiveness is inspired by love. False forgiveness is motivated by ego. I want you to notice that. True forgiveness and false forgiveness come from 2 completely different sources. True forgiveness is inspired by love. I want you to hear me say that. Its home is a compassionate heart. False forgiveness, on the other hand, is motivated by fear and ego. So here are some signs that you might still be forgiving, albeit falsely. Your painful feelings are buried. They're not gone. They have a tendency to come up again. You fail to experience any release or sense of peace. And trust me, if you felt it, you would know it. You still have these fantasies of revenge or getting even or punishing the wrongdoer. You feel a kind of like superiority or even self-righteousness and want some kind of reward for having forgiven. You feel like forgiving is a favor that you're granting the other person or even yourself. Right? You're still doing it because that's what people say. You don't forgive for the other person, you forgive for yourself. No, it's nonsense. This is just a favor trade. It doesn't feel better. You expect certain terms and conditions to be met before you forgive, like that apology that I mentioned. You forgive. I see this a lot, you guys. We forgive because of what you fear you're going to lose. Maybe your home or your lifestyle or your 401. This is also a sign. The past still has the power to hurt, no matter how long ago it happened. And you still feel the need to be right. Or you forgive from pity. I see that too. So let's go back to the example of my client quickly. She would argue that she has forgiven her husband's indiscretions, but her underlying motive for forgiving him was because she feared losing her home, her family, and her marriage, and what it meant to stay married. That was what she answered when I asked her that all-important question. While those are all very important considerations, the fact is this: forgiving out of fear of losing something is still counterfeit forgiveness. It's not real. Therefore, it doesn't stick. This isn't really forgiving. It's actually suppressing. Suppressing is the most common form of fake or false forgiveness. And here's how it usually plays out. If forgiveness is motivated from fear and not love, rather than releasing the hurt and the resentment, what people attempt to do is bury it. But suppressed hurt and resentment are like beach balls. As you push down a beach ball in water, okay, as long as there is an applied force, the ball will stay underwater. But the minute you let up, the minute you forget that you're holding it down, the minute that you are exhausted from pressing this ball down in the water, it will fly up, it will explode. And that's exactly what happens internally. Feelings will find ways to surface through the cracks of our daily life and our experiences. This is what makes suppressing so dangerous. It gives the illusion that the hurt is over when in fact, it's simply hidden. My client didn't understand why she felt so irritable, so frustrated all the time. She didn't understand why she couldn't be happy even when things were going well, and why she found herself to be argumentative, or why intimacy may actually was repulsive or even indifferent for her. And my client never made the connection that what she was experiencing is the price of suppressing versus forgiving. I want you to understand that. The act of forgiveness itself is not the real miracle. The real miracle is the source that inspires us to forgive. What is that source? That source is love. The real miracle is in loving someone enough to be inspired to forgive. This is often the big aha. It was for my client. I hope that this source of love, rooted deep in the work that's required, will be chosen by you today. Because the peace on the other side of it, the true forgiveness and the forget, will be available, but only if that work is done. I hope you will do that work. And I will see you next week. Have an amazing one, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. You have been listening to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rolling, where I share big ideas to inspire, impact, and influence your life. Tune in every Friday at 11 Central on transformationtalkradio.com for your morning cup of coffee, the hug you never want to end, and that inspirational message that you felt was written just for you. Each show is inspiring you to become you with purpose and intention. For more information or to connect with me, visit www.leahrowling.com.